On July 4th, firefighter Thomas Araguz died in the line of duty. But quickly, media attention shifted from a fallen hero to his grieving widow. Who is Nikki Araguz? Is she legally his wife? And did Thomas know of her unique journey? In a moment, Nikki will join us. But the attention this story has received prompts us to look deeper and ask, how do we assign sex to the one out of every 100 children born outside the standard definition of male or female? And how do we decide who, in the state of Texas, is eligible to marry? Tonight, we look beyond the headlines to better understand, both legally and medically, how we define man and woman. I'm Ernie Manouse, and this is Houston 8. Nikki Araguz joins us now. And first off, before we begin, our sympathy out to you in the loss of your husband. We're very sorry about that.
Thank you.
We're also very concerned how when somebody loses someone to suddenly be thrown into the media spotlight, and we hope that we don't add to your stress in this conversation. And as we have said, and we'll continue to throughout the show, we're not here to retry the case, but we're here to understand your story and where you came from. And I guess my first question is, you consider yourself to be a woman. End of story.
Right.
People out there are assuming and confused by the difference between transgender, intersex. What is the classification you find yourself in? How do you define who Nikki is?
I simply am a heterosexual woman. That's how I define myself. I'm not a medical professional, but I know that I have been diagnosed with a partial androgen insensitivity syndrome, and that falls under a classification medically as a transgendered syndrome.
And folks seem to have problems getting past the idea, and they assume that when we talk in these terms, that it's someone who was a male, born a male, grew up as a male, somehow felt they weren't a male, so they had sexual reassignment surgery. That is a different condition than what you went through, correct?
Completely. In my growing up, even in my early years, as young as 3 and 4, my parents started to notice that I was not developing into a boy, that I was developing into a girl, and sought medical professionals. And late 70s, early 80s, nobody knew what was going on. And so they just allowed me to continue to develop into the woman I am today.
A lot of people ask the questions and are trying to figure out if your husband knew, when he knew. Outside of all of that, because court is deciding all of that, and you know your story of it. I'm curious how you breach the subject with someone when you meet them. When you are developing an intimate relationship with someone, how this topic comes up and how do you explain it?
You know, that's something that I had to learn. And as a teenager, I broached it with fear and anxiety and a lot of denial and hiding it. Not fully understanding where I was, and also just being an immature teenager, not knowing how to answer those types of questions. But when I reached a certain point at 19 and realized that, you know, honesty up front about this medical condition and the aspects of my life needed to be spoken up front and honestly with whomever I was going to have any sort of intimate relationship, whether it be a close friend or someone who I was going to be involved with intimately.
The reactions you saw surprised you, what you expected, not what you expected?
I actually was, it was generally always just accepted, and you know, the response was more of a, so what? Mm-hmm. You know, much like my husband Thomas responded, I love you anyway.
I think people watching would say, how? I think the concept is so foreign to a lot of folks that if their spouse were to tell them, I used to be something different than I was, that they would be caught off guard.
But see, I don't think I was ever something different than I am. I may have been identified by one little letter as something different than other than the female that I am now, but there was no difference in my personality and in my my attitude and the way I communicate.
And I think that was the point I'm trying to get at, is that when you are in a relationship with someone, there is so much more than just the perceived physical, that there is the person you know. So when things like this come out, I think in a lot of situations people figure out a way to deal with what they're confronted with as opposed to being fearful or scared. You're still the person you were 2 minutes ago before you said that.
Right, exactly. And that's what Thomas's heart was, compassionate and loving, and that's the relationship we had.
How did you two meet?
We met at church.
And the reaction, love at first sight, what happened? Not love at first sight?
It was definitely attraction at first sight. And thank you, I love sharing that memory. A month ago, yesterday was the anniversary of his death, and I miss him greatly. Mm-hmm. We spent, on our way out of church, we said hello to each other on our way in, and on our way out, he invited me to eat breakfast, and we went and spent 3 hours talking, and what turned into laughter, and, this just a terrific development of our relationship.
A lot of people are surprised by the attention this is getting. I'm sure you're at the top of the list at who you are. You ran for mayor of your town.
I did.
Which makes me think that there wasn't a part of you hiding or shut away. Did you expect during the mayoral race that this would all come out?
Honestly, we lived such a quiet, private, life. I published a magazine. It was very well known in our community, and I participated a lot in community events and activities. And I embraced the community of Wharton and loved it so much that I wanted to help it. That's why I started the company I did. And that's why I, supported my husband through that, and through going to school to be the firefighter police officer, EMT, that he came to be during our marriage.
Mm-hmm. But at no time did you think, I'm running for mayor, people are going to find out this secret? Did you internalize
I guess I never
it that way?
Ever really thought of it as a secret, or, but I guess I had put a part of my past behind me. After the surgery, it was something that I didn't think about anymore, because it was a birth defect that had been removed, and it was just like gone.
And again, I want to clarify for our audience, when you say it was the birth defect, we are not talking about a fully developed, all-male individual going and having a sexual reassignment surgery.
That would not be at all an accurate description of what happened for me, because I was an underdeveloped, and not past the age of 2 or 3 years old did I develop anatomically genitalia.
A lot with this story is being morphed into gay marriage now, and they're talking about ramifications from that. How do you view marriage?
I view marriage as any loving commitment between two people, period. Yeah. And I'm not trying to be a platform for anyone except for my own marriage at this point. Whatever comes as a result of that and helping anybody else be able to have equal civil liberties, then so be it.
How does the poster child term feel to you?
I don't like that. I realize that's probably where I'm at. But I don't necessarily, that's not what I signed up for.
Right.
I was a housewife and, ran a magazine and loved my husband and my children and rode my horse. This was my life prior to my husband's death. And with the lawsuit that was brought on, I was thrust into the media and
being put into the spotlight that you have, I'm sure that you get both sides of the spectrum reacting to you. How do you weather through that?
Honestly, it's very difficult. I'm still grieving the loss of my husband, and it's preventing me from doing that in a lot of ways. But I weather through it because I believe so strongly in my marriage and in the love that Thomas and I shared, that I'm not going to stop fighting for the truth and the equality.
Yeah. Well, we thank you so much for taking the time to come in and share your story with us, helping our audience understand a little bit more of what's going on. And again, our sympathy for the loss of your husband.
Thank you.
Nikki Araguz, thank you.
Thanks.
Sharing